Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kauai County Council Roundup right here from Hoike Studios on Rice Street. This is the recap for yesterday's council meeting, July 31st. I'm Councilmember Mel Raposa, your chairman, and Vice Chair Kipukai Kuli'i.
Aloha.
And thank you for joining us, and appreciate again Hoike for allowing us to use this amazing facility. So we had a lot of items on the agenda. It was a relatively busy day. We did get a briefing from our Kauai Emergency Management Administrator, Elton Oshio, and we had requested their presence to update us on our basically disaster preparedness. We are into hurricane season right now. There's actually a couple brewing right now that could possibly pose a threat. But we wanted to find out after the Lahaina fires, have we made adjustments? And they actually did a really, really good briefing, a very thorough briefing. And of course, we had questions. And I think, one of my concerns are communications to the public that do not have electronic or cell phones or in some cases TVs. A lot of the people that perished out there in Lahaina were elderly people. As we saw the names being put on the screen every night on the news, it was a lot of kupuna. And we don't know the reasons, but I think we rely so much on the cell phone alerts and the TV alerts and the radio alerts. If you don't have access to those things, how do we get the message across and the warning? So that was part of the discussion. But I know Kipukai took a lot of notes. As he always does.
That's how I listen, taking notes. Yeah, it was definitely a very thorough presentation. I liked when the Kima Elton said, our director said, be ready so that you don't have to get ready. And when they were talking about ready, set, go in regards to fire, and I know to Chair too, you were talking about how we just always have to be ready. And for that, when that call comes, that you can evacuate immediately. But in talking about evacuation too, I mean, even from some of the testimony that we heard, it becomes clear that we have to put more energy and resources ensuring that we have safe evacuation routes, and that also we have safe evacuation centers, so people have places to go. There's been some efforts to, because the state moved over some of that kuleana, that responsibility, to the county, and we have neighborhood centers, we have schools, but we weren't built initially for that purpose, right? So they had to do some retrofitting, like replacing all the glass, but they're only retrofitting it to Category 2 or Category 3 standards. So it's still not necessarily the safest place in a category for hurricane or for wind events and stuff like that. But the interesting and the tricky part with this is that there's so many different kinds of potential disaster, and there's a different way of protecting yourself from the different ones. Of course, one of the things we talked about too was that I had mentioned that the West Side homesteaders are looking to get access to lands from the Department of Hawaiian Homelands up Mauka, so that they can do a center. It's going to be really primarily like a pavilion. They're talking about a youth campground and also. But to have an evacuation center, because people from Kekaha now, when they tsunami warning, they go up Mauka, they're basically driving up the road towards Koke and just parking on the side of the highway. So don't even have bathrooms or anything. They might have to wait there for hours. So that's one of the things they're talking about that. But then it's a flip too, and if it's a fire, right? And if it's a fire starting up in the uplands and coming down, they're not going to drive up to an evacuation center that's in the fire. So we were asking Elton too about, when you give them notice, okay, you evacuate, are you also kind of giving people an idea of what the threat is, where is it coming from, and where do they go to evacuate? Of course, many people in our neighborhoods too, there's only one way out, so.
Yeah, that's why it's so vital. I mean, I really appreciated Elton's, how they use the ready, set, go. But the ready has to be ready before the threat is here.
Yeah, all the time.
They found out in Maui, by the time they realized that the threat was deadly, it was too late. And so, being ready means having a plan in place, evacuation plans. Kipukai brings up a very good point. In fact, that was one of the things that the emergency management director of Maui said. He didn't want to blow the siren because people would head for the hills, which is simply not true. We got to educate our communities, and we got to make sure that they understand evacuation routes and shelters. I was quite dismayed when I heard that we are spending money to renovate or retrofit our Kalaheo gym and our Kilauea gym to be shelters. The Kilauea gym will be a Category 3, and the Kalaheo gym's rated at a Category 2. No, we need to bring it up to Category 5. I mean, that's if we're going to spend the money. If I'm at home in my house and there's a hurricane, and my option is to stay at home, which already has survived 2 hurricanes, or to go to a Category 2 shelter, I'm just going to stay at home. And versus if it's a Category 5 shelter. So, yeah, we got a lot of work to do, and I think this plan that they're working on that should be ready by 2026 really has to include all of the details, alternate routes. I think Councilmember DeCosta, being a West Side boy and a plantation camp resident, being that his father, grandfather was all in a plantation, he is aware of all of the cane roads that are available. And I think we got to tap into that knowledge from the community so we can have escape routes in place. I mean, that was another problem with Lahaina, was they had nowhere to go and they didn't know how to get there. So, now is the time we plan for it, right?
Yeah.
When
I think even Councilmember Kagawa had mentioned something because the Kauai High School gym came up as well. So it's a newer gym, right? The newer facilities are built better, right? So that it could serve also as evacuation center. But I think Councilmember Kagawa's point was we should put something in place like already so that the state is required to allow us to utilize that gym in an emergency. And I imagine they wouldn't not, but you never know with the bureaucracy sometimes and
we have the master
what it might
key.
take.
We have the master key. Yeah. It's called a hammer. We just break them down. I mean, I cannot imagine the state saying no if the hurricane.
But when time is of the essence too.
Yeah, but we shouldn't have to wait for
do those
that.
things in advance.
That should all be in the plan. We had a request for approval on E911 funds. So every year, the county has access to. It's called an enhanced 911 board. It's a state board made up of all of these cell phone companies. Part of your bill, if you look in there, there's a little fund that you got to pay a little tax that goes into this fund, and those funds are used for the local counties to fund 911s and the other services. And that was in the amount of over 900 grand. So that was obviously approved. Then we did have some bills out for first reading, and we had a few very interesting ones. The first one was one that I introduced, and it was because if you live in the home, if you're a homeowner and you live in the home, you qualify for an owner-occupied tax rate. And that includes the lowest tax rate that we have. It also includes a 3% cap on your assessments.
That's the what we used to call the homestead, right?
Correct.
That everyone gets because you live in the home.
Right. So that's obviously they should have the largest benefit. So up until recently, if you were leasing from the state, from DLNR, we have a very small number of DLNR residential properties that are being leased by local residents, and they were all, because they were living in the home, they qualified for that break. The problem is they're on month-to-month leases. For some reason, the DLNR does not do long-term leases. So one of our county attorney's opinions came back and said they do not, based on the statute, the way we have our tax law written, they don't qualify. So this bill simply fixes that and allows local residents that live in their home that are leased from the state, they will enjoy the same benefit. And I think it makes sense. They have had this benefit all along. They are not renting out their homes. They are not vacation renting their homes. Mm-hmm. They are living in these homes, and these homes have been in the generations or in the family for generations.
I think one of the council members had kind of challenged it and said, oh, but I thought we don't do bills for a specific group of people. But then the response to that was, it's not to create a new benefit, but it's to be fair and to treat them the way that they were treated prior, and to restore that equality with how people who are homesteaders or owner occupants are eligible for that lowest tax rate.
Yeah, and it's not a special benefit. And as I said on the floor yesterday, I think we got to work with the state DLNR to provide long-term leases for our local residents. That is the true solution that
But
we
until they do, this is a temporary fix. I
Yeah.
think you call one the fix and one the band-aid, I think.
Yeah, this was the Band-Aid because otherwise these people are going to be taxed out of their homes.
We heard from individuals, right, saying,
Yeah.
whoa,
And then another very important funding that we get help with is our sexual assault nurse examiners. So when Kauai Police Department receives a sexual assault complaint, they dispatch these nurses, specially trained nurses with specially trained equipment, or specially trained with special equipment, and they go and do the actual examination of the victim. It's typically female victims, and in many cases are young juveniles, and these nurses are trained in that, and obviously it requires funding. So every year we get a grant from the Stop Violence Against Women Act.
The VAWA Act, the
VAWA.
Violence Against Women. I think
Yeah.
several years back when Biden was a senator, he was the big proponent of that act.
Yeah, that's where the funding comes from, and through the state attorney general's office. So Kauai Police Department was up, and obviously we approved that to keep that program running. Very, very, working at the Y, very, very important.
Critical, important. It's a big support to our police as well.
Yeah, yeah. After that, we had our building code bill. So the building code is basically the laws that pertain to building. When you go get a building permit, this is where the laws are written. Every so many years, the National Board of Building Coders, or whatever it's called, they come out with a new building code, and we are required within a certain amount of time to adopt the code along with our local amendments. So that was the first reading.
You call it the Code Council.
Code
And
Council.
this is probably our biggest bill of the year.
Aside from the budget.
200 and aside from the budget, 262 pages. And basically, they said that we're required within 2 years after the state passes it to pass it as well. But the state didn't pass. Each county can put in their own local amendments, and the state didn't, bother to deal with what we wanted or needed. So we have to do that as well, and that's a part of this. And as Chair was saying too, he emphasized how important it was for all the stakeholders to be brought in early and to be part of the process now while we're in committee, because in committee is where we can make the amendments to improve the bill. So
Some good
reaching
news, though,
out.
I got to say, and I know this was mentioned on the floor by several council members, and I'm hoping that anyway that we're speaking for all council members, but the objective here by our council is when we go through this building code is to make sure there aren't any unnecessary mandates that drive the cost of construction up. And I can tell you that our buildings division, Leo, she has already talked about some of the proposed amendments, which includes if you have an open beam ceiling, right now, the way the codes are written, you got to have insulation. And, we don't have freezing cold here. One of the options is to remove that requirement so we can allow people to build their homes without that additional cost.
Yep.
Also,
the cost of housing is already too high,
it's
so
nuts.
we got to try and bring the cost down as much as possible.
we are here trying to bring more inventory to our people, and it's hard because of cost. And building codes regulation typically drives costs up. So this council, I'm hoping, will make a very good effort, and hopefully we're successful in removing these unnecessary burdens so that we can, somewhat bring the cost down. I know one of the requirements that are being proposed is if you live in a single wall construction house like myself, I have the old Hicks home. Many of our families have the old Hicks home, single wall redwood construction. Right now, if I was to do a renovation to a room, or if I wanted to redo my kitchen, I would not be able to renovate it to a single wall house. I'd have to make it a double wall, which would it takes it out of my affordability. So that I'm hoping down will pass, because there's a lot of families here that would like to expand and extend, but cannot because the cost of converting a single wall to a double wall is just very, very high. So there'll be many proposals like that. And as Mr. Cooley said, we are soliciting input from the community, from the trades, from the carpenters, the plumbers,
The builders
electricians.
themselves, yeah.
That, is there something in there right now that is unnecessary? It's not going to impact safety
I
or
think the word
health.
is onerous.
Onerous. Onerous. That's why I hang
It's
out with
too
this
much.
guy. He teaches me a
It's
word
a
of the
big
day.
word I never use.
Onerous. But anyway, so that's going to be set for a public hearing in a month, and then it'll go to committee. So we have some time, but we are planning to move that out as quick as we can. Following that, there was another bill that I introduced, and it was a bill that was going to allow homeowners to have a mid-year assessment of your tax for your tax bill. And the reason why I did that was because for people that purchase their home after the deadline of filing your status, whether you're an owner occupant or it's a residential or resort, if you buy the house after the deadline, and let's say you're buying a house that was being rented, that was in the residential class with a higher tax rate, and you purchased it after the deadline to file, and you're going to live in the house, you are stuck with that classification for the next tax year.
You don't get your owner-occupant lower rate
Right.
immediately, automatically, because it's the cycle of our real property tax collections.
So this would have helped to some extent. So I went ahead and introduced a bill, along with a bill that was going to include 2 more staff people to address this, because it's a 100% manual process. We cannot have the computers do it. So all of the mid-year assessments would have to be done manually. And in speaking with the finance department, our new tax manager, we just do not have the resources. In fact, we do not have enough resources as it is. And we have vacancies in the real property tax office. We have vacancies in the finance department, and we don't have applicants. We don't even have people applying for our jobs. So the request from the finance department was to hold off. They're going to run pretty much a test year and get the data for us to see exactly what the impact would be and how many people we would really need. So I agreed, because we're not going to go past a bill mandating the finance department and tax office to do something that they logistically, physically cannot do. So that one actually was received, and it will be reintroduced at a later time.
And it was actually 28 and 29, right? That,
Yes.
You and Councilmember Kagawa
Correct. 2
were
bills.
introducing together.
Yeah.
So it could come back around again, But
Well, it'll come around. Although I will say that our new tax manager is looking at the way we assess properties, and there may be some changes coming up soon. So I'm excited about that. And then the last thing, which was actually the first thing we did on the agenda yesterday, because we involved some kids, but the last thing on the agenda was a request for us to approve retroactively the donation of volunteer hours for the restoration of the area fronting the Kapa Armory.
yeah.
And Kipukai, that was pretty cool. I gotta
It
say.
was cool.
So the Boy Scouts Troop 148 out of Kapa'a, one of the troops, one of the scouts came up with a Eagle Scout project. His name is Kamekona Thompson, and his role was to organize and set up the entire project, work with the government, work with the county to get all the permits in place. And him and his team of about 20 individuals, and I think you have the names, and
Yeah.
that went out there and redid that whole area. It was remarkable, and I'll share a little bit later. But Kipuka, if you want to just chat.
Yeah,
real
excellent.
quick.
And Kamekona is the son of one of our police officers, right?
Yeah, Bobby.
Yeah, yeah. And they shared a lot of great pictures, and basically they spent a whole day, and it was pretty much blending in with the rest of the landscaping. It was getting overgrown. You just saw some rocks and some shrubbery.
It was ugly. It was ugly. It was
So
ugly.
they, dug it all up, cleared it, put the new gravel in, and bordered it, and it looked so much
They
nicer. and
repainted all the curbs.
cleaned
and-
up the
and
plaque that honors the 3 veterans that it does honor. And all I did was during the when we had discussion too, I wanted to make sure that I mentioned all the names. So I'll do that again here. And it was Masao Fontana, Ashley Oishi, Orion Ishino, Ashley Thompson, Chris LaRusso, Caden Yago, Taylen Kurti, Isaiah Konishi, Terry Konishi, Hunter Corpuz, Kaylee Langtad, Michael Yoshioka, Caleb Calderon, Roxanne Thompson, Kamekona Thompson, that's the Boy Scout himself, the Eagle Scout, trying to become an Eagle Scout. Joanne Cummings, Keika Puloa Thompson, Hunter Langtad, a couple more, Maddox LaRusso, and Phoenix LaRusso.
So, I joked about it on the floor, and it really wasn't a joke, because if the county had taken that project on, it would have cost a lot of money. It would have taken a long time.
They did it in one day.
These kids did it in 8 hours. Of course, again, the planning process, I think he said he started like 8 months ago or something like
All
that.
these pages of paperwork, he said.
Yeah, it's just a lot of work. But what it did was it just really transformed that place. And I think many people didn't realize that when that armory was built, it was built as a memorial to those three gentlemen. And I wish I had their names. I don't have it. I'm embarrassed, but I don't have it. But it's three veterans from Vietnam.
Here.
You have it?
Sergeant Gaylord K. DeFries, SP4 Rudy Aquino, and SP4 David S. La Amea.
Yeah. So there was a plaque over there. In fact, they found another monument that no one even knew existed while they were digging and all of that. So yeah, it required a lot of work, and I encourage you to go check it out. It's the Kappa Armory right there by the Brian J. Baptiste Field. I think we all know where that is, and go see what they did. But it truly, and just to see that these were all kids. They had some help from some of the adults, but the work was actually done by the kids, and it was amazing work. I asked one of the other scouts if they wanted to do an Eagle Scout project at my house. They're more than welcome to come over and bring the crew and redo my yard. That'd be pretty cool. But yeah, it was awesome day. And a couple of the kids came up and was able to share what they did. It was just an amazing project. So unreal.
Sure. I want to just jump back and say one last thing about the Kauai Emergency Management Agency's presentation, right? They basically was giving us a status update on the disaster preparedness. The one thing I wanted to say too is in my final comments, I said that they and the people they work with, their community partners and all, and the first responders, all of that they're the experts, and that we on the council want to hear from them on the ways that we can support them. And we did hear from the public as well, saying you need more funding. So when budget time comes around, put some funding into evacuation centers and what have you. But I think all the council had agreed too that we know this is critical. The next disaster is inevitable, and we need to be better prepared. So, and that they need to let us know how we can help.
In fact, Jill Lowry from Anainaho was
Yes,
there, and
yes.
she is a very strong
Dome
advocate.
lady.
Yeah, she calls herself the Dome Lady. But there's
The
these
monolithic
domes that are used all over the country, and it's actually rated at Category 7. I didn't realize we had 7 categories of hurricanes, but it's not the prettiest. But if that is what we need to do, it's much cheaper than building a traditional Category 5 hurricane-proof shelter.
Fireproof. The fire
It's fire,
burned
it's
all
everything.
around it and past it, basically.
Yeah, it's amazing, and that is one of the things I'm hoping that our emergency management people take a look at, because we must consider all options.
The thing she said too was that you're going to be building future facilities anyway, so think about this design and concept. If you build a gym in the future, if you build a warehouse, whatever, have it double as an evacuation center just by using this type of facility.
Well, take a look at our professional sporting events in the basketball. It's all like domes. They're domes now. They're arenas that are domes. The football stadiums are domes, and I think they do that on purpose, so they can actually use it as shelters as well. So yeah, it was a very informative day, I thought. And folks, again, you can watch our council meetings here on Hawike at Channel 53. You can watch it on our website at www.kauai.gov. I encourage you to go and watch yesterday's meeting on our website or on Hawike. because I think the presentation that Kima did was a really good one. And you'll get to see the pictures of the project that these kids did. But I do want to thank Hoike for allowing us this opportunity every week to come into the studio and share a recap at least, so you kind of know what's going on at the county council. But again, Hoike Channel 53, www.kauai.gov, hit the webcast meetings button, and you can watch any meeting dating back for as many years as you want. Pretty cool stuff.
Mahalo to Huike and to Roger.
Yeah, Roger, our man. And Max does all the
Max
filming at our council meetings. So with that, you guys have a great weekend.
Okay.
Until
Aloha.
next time, ahui ho.
Take
Aloha.
care.